And today we are talking to Ian Cameron, who once told Becky Teddy to shut up, or Becky Teddy told him to shut up. I don't actually know. But someone who didn't tell him to shut up is the DA. Because Ian Cameron, apparently you have joined the DA. Is this correct?
It is correct. So I can sort of give you the background so long. Over the past about a year and a half, sorry, that was my child.
That's the EFF in Parliament. Sorry,
Yeah,
just ignore them.
Yeah. So I was going to shout "shut up," but it wouldn't be good.
Like, as Becca Seller would say, "Shut up."
Exactly. So basically, about a year and a half ago, on a serious note, my wife and I started talking about the idea of being able to do both ground level stuff, but also influencing policy. And the reason just being that for the past 15 years, it sometimes feels like you're mopping floors, so make a hell of an impact as civil society. And it is so important. I mean, you guys know, and I'm a firm supporter, and I really enjoy the whole morning shot show and concept and discussions, and everything that's come out about doing it yourself, etc., is crucial, and that will never go away. I think there's somewhere the two must be able to marry each other, and that's where our thought came from. Just over a year ago, I spoke with some of the leaders of the DA, and they said, "But why don't you give it a shot?" And I went through the confidential candidate program, and about 3-4 weeks ago, I heard that I am on the list. There's still an appeal process, so it would depend on that. And then Carla's my wife. We spoke about it, and we said, "Hey, let's give it a chance." And we can talk about it in depth now, but in short, I think it's good to summarize for you guys just what my thoughts in the background are. Two specific things that stand out is administrative depth and logistical depth. That's two crucial parts. So that's without any emotion, saying that if someone tells you, Ramon, you're governing now, boom, go. How are you going to do that if you don't have any form of depth? Oh, I shouldn't ask you.
Squads, gulags.
I don't even know if I should ask Byron either. You guys are putting me in a very awkward. Who do I choose here? Those are just the unemotional topics. The other part is
you hear that, Ramon? DA doesn't trust us to govern. ACDP will be like, "Off you go, boys." But the DA is like, you two are like a little bit. Hey, you need some training. That means brainwashing.
Those are the two unemotional questions, and then the last one was just, in terms of governing experience, and from what I've personally experienced with the policing level of things, where DA government is in power, was really positive. And obviously, my focus will stay crime, policing, that side of things. And in that space, I feel at home, and I've got a wide canvas to really be able to do what I do.
And apparently the salary is like 1.2 million. And as Ramon and I were discussing, I suppose if the DA offered us 1.2 million, we'd also be like, "We love the DA, vote DA colors." But in seriousness, there are MPs in Parliament that say, "Hey, it's not enough money. I can't cope." We all know you live in. She says it's like the 350 grant that she's earning there, and she needs at least 10 million. So how do you feel about going there onto a goddamn boy salary?
To be blatantly honest, just cold, straight answer is we haven't spoken about it too much. I think to me, that's a pretty damn good salary. If I'm talking to you guys now, there's no reason for Busisiwe Mkhwebane to not be very, very comfortable with that. So there's nothing to complain about in that regard. That being said, you shouldn't be doing this to get rich, because I guess rich is a relative term, especially in South African context at the moment. But if you really want to become, be in the top 0.5 percentile of rich people in South Africa, you should definitely not venture into, let's say, it's a bit of an oxymoron, honest politics.
Come on, you.
So
we
I
are
think
adults in the room, yeah.
Yeah. So there's I think that's the thing. But yeah, I mean, I didn't didn't sign up for it for that. I'm used to the NGO space, which is relatively hostile and high risk at times, especially in a smaller NGO. But I was lucky enough to have a very stable income over the past just over a decade with NGOs, both Action Society and AfriForum. And what's awesome about it, I learned a hell of a lot that I think I can apply in different places.
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it first. Ian Cameron has not been bought off by the DA. He just loves them that much.
And AMP salary is more than enough for the guy. So, Ian, what's interesting about this? Like the DA, okay, we get along with them. We sort of know them. We speak to them sometimes. But it's rare for someone, one of their biggest flaws to me always was, it's rare for them to find someone on the outside and invite them into the fold. But it looks like,
very much
they're doing a very good thing here in terms of you are very efficient, you are very effective, you are very good at what you do, you understand the problems, you understand what solutions are there to be given to solve the problems around policing, especially and solving GBV and kidnapping and all sorts of other crimes. So I think it's a remarkable thing for the DA and a very good thing for the DA to actually go ahead hunt you and be like, listen, you're really effective, come into the party. I'm not saying that you are the first, but I mean, it's a very good thing for the DA to do this. Do you feel like surprised?
To be honest, yes, I do. To be very honest, I thought the smaller parties would have rather done that. So at the beginning, I felt a little bit, to be honest, and it probably make me blush when I say it, but I felt a bit flattered because I thought, yes, but regardless of what you might think and what your political orientation may be, the DA is a bloody big machine. There's depth in the system, and obviously I've been checking things out, especially over the last year and a half, quite a bit. I think what stood out to me was the fact that within this last year and a half, there were many times, even publicly, where I disagreed with the DA and leadership in the DA. But they were the only organization of all the political parties that are somehow involved in government that I was able to openly criticize. And I'm not saying just badmouth and then leave without the solution, but also sit around the table and have a really constructive way forward. And it happened often. I mean, it happened, I'm in Drakenstein now in the Paul era. It happened here. And every time after a difference of some sort, we built something positive in the end. And that really stood out because it was almost like there's this maturity to say, hey, wait a minute. First of all, I had to go personally as Ian and say maybe I was a little bit too harsh on one or two things. So I had to do some introspection. But on that side, they did the same thing, whether it was local or provincial. And it was fantastic to see how we moved forward with that. So yeah, I'm excited about it. It also, the day before yesterday, I had the opportunity to speak on behalf of the DA at the policy release, the crime policy release for the multi-party charter in Mfuleni in the Cape Flats. And, it really provides a wide canvas for a lot of the things that I've personally experienced to get it out there. And I really enjoyed the multi-party charter bit because, to me, I have good relationships with everyone in that space, and it was phenomenal to just be welcomed into the group. And I don't know if I'm too naive, but it really does seem positive to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see what role you take as you get closer to the elections. I'm actually curious. You mentioned smaller parties. No one else approach you?
None.
The ANC, they were like, hey, you could be deputy minister of policing?
No, not
anything?
One. Not one. The comments from one or two of the smaller parties to me was that, they said as an activist, you would be able to say and get away with a lot. As a politician, you won't. And it's quite ironic because I heard that in the activist space as well. And they said, but you don't have access to parliament, so then you won't be able to say X, Y, and Z. So I don't know why it just doesn't matter. It's like becoming, for example, I spoke to an old friend of mine recently and he started a law firm in a small town. And he says all the lawyers said to me, you won't survive here, so I think a lot of people are in their comfort zones in that space. And it's fantastic to see how many new, fresh individuals are coming in across the board, different parties. And I think it will definitely ruffle some feathers and create a new dynamic.
So I think Byron Ian is saying there's hope for us yet. Like if we need to be, Minister of Strategic Communications, i.e. propaganda, there's hope for us as Warning Shot to become the same for the DA. But Ian, if you are a member of Parliament, which I assume you're on the list, it was publicised that you're on the list, so I assume that is correct. Assuming you go into Parliament, what is your strategy? What are you really hoping to achieve by becoming a member of Parliament with all the attention given to these people? What do you want to do?
Yeah, so I think the first part is obviously learn a hell of a lot. During the confidential candidate process, when there was a part where you had to literally go and make a speech of a generic topic that was generated by a computer. You could choose one out of the three, and then you had to make the speech, and you only had X amount of time to prep, and then you walk in and there's a panel sitting there and they can ask you anything. And in that, I literally said to them, don't ask me technical things that I would have had to learn over the last 10 years, because I honestly cannot answer them the right way. So, and I'm not going to pretend to be something that I'm not. So just in terms of my focus, firstly, it would stay policing. The opportunity that I see, apart from victims of crime, we all know how serious the issue is, but it's to actually help the good cops inside the South African Police Service to influence that space to the point where we can have some kind of efficiency, accountability, etc. in SAPS. I've heard people say exactly what I've said now many times before. I think the difference is that I really do have a lot of great relationships with good people in the police, and they already share so much information that if we use it in the right way in the parliamentary space and still spend time on the outside, on ground level, as I already do, and you keep on building those relationships, surely, guys, something's got to give. And that with civil society has to put pressure. And maybe I'm just too optimistic sometimes, but I decide to be on the side of hope and not hopelessness, because otherwise we can just as well leave it. There's no point.
Very, very positive, Ian. Very, very positive. And we know that you'll make a smashing go of it because you're a charismatic guy and the DA is lucky to have you. Are you a little bit worried, though? White guy in the Western Cape with a bunch of Karens, not really listening to you, going, oh, come on, people are just misunderstood. What do you really think you can achieve, though, in the world of reality, right? I mean, if you go to Parliament and you take those roles, put a stamp on it. What do you actually want to achieve? What's the Ian Cameron mark of politics?
Yeah, for sure. So it's not of politics. It's of professionalizing the police service. And I'm not talking about just a manifesto speech. I'm talking about literally making sure that the committee sitting around a table deciding of who's appointed as a national commissioner actually appoints a national commissioner that has security clearance, for example. I mean, do you know that the current South African Police Service national commissioner fails his security clearance almost monthly, and he's national commissioner? So that's just one silly example. But doing a skills audit, making sure that if you are on a portfolio committee or on another platform, that you do skills audits of senior SAPS members and make sure that they are appointed according to merit, not political affiliation. And then obviously the training part, zooming in on that and making sure that we've got merit appointments at the training institutions. So those are the practical things, Byron. But just on your first part of your comment, and I think this is the great part of it, is that 85%, 90% of my work over the last few years was in areas where people were mostly not white. But never was I treated differently because I am white, and obviously vice versa. I didn't treat anyone else like that. The point is, often people, especially in poorer communities, are neglected in terms of criminal justice just because they've got no other remedy. So the state knows we can just leave it and nothing will really happen. So that gave me an opportunity to build genuine relationships, and actually have good friendship relationships on sometimes very far. I almost want to touch on far left and even sometimes far right, but to have good relationships across the spectrum and to be able to see how different people bring different solutions to the table. And in, for example, parts of the Cape Flats, you've got a massive spectrum of different community organizations and so on. And And I think if you keep those relationships healthy and keep spending time with them, and then do the above, as I just mentioned, about how appointments are made, making sure that the right processes and procedures, policies are in place, then surely you have to make some kind of an impact. I can't see how you don't. I mean, just from a civil society point of view, the amount of senior SAPS members that we've had transferred, sacked, or just suspended over the last few months, it was really successful. So if we bring the two together and it's a focused strategy, it must work. We must be able to change the police.
So, Ian, have you been paying attention to El Salvador at all?
A lot. So highest number per capita of incarcerated people in the world. There are risks to it. I've heard all the stories because I love telling the El Salvador story. So I've heard all the counters, especially from the far left, about human rights and so on and so forth. And it's always important. You should always listen to everyone, and then out of that you determine what the solution is. I always listen. You might not, but I like to.
No.
You
know who else doesn't listen? No, you know who doesn't listen to the far left? It's Nayib Bukele, the president of El Salvador. Here's the thing about El Salvador, because you're going to be focused on policing and crime prevention and all the rest of it, which is fantastic, right? To me, crime is the most important thing to end, to fight. Once you solve crime, you solve many other issues. People are poor because there's crime. It's not the other way around. So in El Salvador, they just took a hard decision. You imprison criminals. You don't give them the right of anything, really, for the most part. There are some mistakes. Well, maybe one or two of them are innocent. That's fine. That gets wrung out in the process. But what is interesting in El Salvador is that they didn't look for consensus building. They didn't look at what the studies say about crime. They didn't look at sociology or anthropology. They just said criminals need to be locked up. Now, as a member of parliament, you don't have the power to do that. You're not a police officer, don't get me wrong. But I think fundamentally, if we're able to just say the solution to crime is just punishing crime, that seems to be the most obvious way to make this a reality, to make South Africa a lot safer, rather than build consensus or any of that stuff. Or am I a bit, maybe I'm the utopian one?
No, I think I think there's a whole lot of truth in it. I think our situation is sometimes a little bit more complex, but don't hear what I'm not saying. You can definitely compare the two, but because of the political damage that's been done over the last 20 years with regards to specifically things like incarceration, the Department of Justice, how badly the parole process is run sometimes, something as simple as giving someone bail, how terribly wrong that process is steered sometimes. Makes it slightly challenging, because I think there's a whole backlog of people having cases against the state and so on and so forth. But in terms of organized crime, and I'm talking specifically like syndicate and gang type of offenses, we can clean up the streets big time. And we've got the legislation to do it. We just need the right political approach and the political will to do it. I mean, if you read Mark Shaw's Give Us More Guns, I think you guys have read it. We've spoken about it before. If you read that book, it's between 100,000 and 130,000 gangsters just around Mitchell's Plain. And if you start cleaning up house there, I mean, the night before last, they shot and killed 11 people in Mitchell's Plain alone, just in that area. Yesterday, I think we hit about 5. I don't know how many today. In the past 2 weeks, it's 123 people. Now, if you go in there, and you don't need the military, you can do it properly with the police, with the right leadership, you can do it. You can clean house proper. You really can do it. So I think we're going to need more jails and bigger jails, but we can do it.
Yes.
And something that should be discussed, and I'm not sold on it yet completely, but something that needs to be discussed is life in prison without the option or the opportunity to get parole. For certain offenses, we need to look into that. And if you're opposed to the death penalty, which it's a different argument on its own, but if you're opposed to that, then why not make this an option? I mean, we're literally seeing sometimes how monsters get released from prison And I'm sorry, I can't. I can't support the release of some of these criminals. It's no wonder so many South Africans have lost complete faith in the system.
So, Ian, I got a question for you.
Gooi hom voor my.
Second Amendment absolutis or Second Amendment with some caveats?
I love it when you talk foreign, Byron. So just I don't know if I should show, but there's a firearm lying next to me here. So very much pro.
So,
and very,
it's all right. We'll show ours if you show yours.
yeah. Okay, let's do it. There you go.
Cool. There we go. We're all on the
Mine's
same
on my
page.
back. It's staying there.
Good.
But yes,
good.
it's in the picture, viewer. It's in the picture somewhere. You have to find it.
Fantastic. So in short, that won't change from my side, Byron. I'm a firm believer that you should arm yourself in South Africa, arm and trained lawfully, and make sure that people need to understand that you are your own first and last line of defense. It's that simple. What does worry me sometimes is that individuals are sometimes armed, but not enough individuals together are armed. And again, don't hear what I'm not saying, but the fact that you've got 10 houses in a row and 1 out of the 10 has a gun is problematic. We need 8 out of the 10 to have a gun. And maybe you then have 2 that decide, no, I'm not convinced yet, but I would consider it. So we need to change that mindset. But it's important for people to arm themselves, especially in current South Africa. Across the world, we've seen it before, but in South Africa, the state has zero capacity to protect you. There's nothing preventative in place. I mean, this morning, let me tell you a quick story. There's a general in the police called General Tio. So Tio was a senior officer for crime intelligence in the Western Cape. He came to Mbekweni, close to Paul. He went into a shebeen. He locked his gun in the boot of the car, and then someone broke into the boot and stole his gun. The general was just transferred to head office in Pretoria. Nothing, no action taken against. So if that is a senior SAPS member, that's the way that they approach it. Why should we trust them with our lives? It just doesn't make sense to me. So firm believer, lawfully armed, well trained.
Very
Perfect.
good, very good. So I got a question for you. That's a follow-up lead. What are you going to do to, as an MP of Parliament? Can we see Ian outlawing gun-free South Africa? That'd be great.
Well,
I'll sponsor that. You'll even get my vote.
Well, I spoke about Gun-Free South Africa yesterday at the BizNews conference in Hermanus, and they asked, what do I think of Gun-Free South Africa? I said, well, it's very ironic because Adele Kirsten has armed response at her house, so I don't really know what she's complaining about. It's always funny that the very people that complain about guns are the same ones that pray for someone to show up with a gun when they're in trouble. And whether you'll be able to outlaw them, I'm not so sure. But whether I would discredit them, I can promise you that, because it's an utter load of nonsense.
Ian's already become a DA person. Load of nonsense. That's cuck, Ian. It's bullshit. That's what Gun-Free South
I've
Africa
never
is.
said it like that on any interview.
Yeah.
So you can call me what you like. You can read between the lines.
You're allowed to swear in the morning shot. Don't become a lib. No, anyway. Ian, thank you for joining us. I got no further questions. All I can say is huge opportunity as a proper person being in Parliament is actually quite nice, especially from someone outside the tent. Now you in the tent pissing in. It's a great opportunity. And yeah, just don't change who you are, man. Just call Becky a puss to his face now in person every time you're in Parliament. And there you go. Your salary is worth it. Any final questions from you, Byron?
No final questions. I'm just going to be the religious one of us and say, Godspeed to you, my friend. I hope God blesses you in your new pursuits, and you really do deserve it. You've been a strong voice in the community. Everybody knows who you are. They know the fight that you bring. It's a good win for the DA. We don't praise the DA all the time, but we should when they get a good win, and it's a good win. So Godspeed to you, my friend. God bless. I hope you really do well.
Thanks, gents. Appreciate it.